What's going on YouTube? How to layer with water mixable oil paint. First thing is first, check to see if your painting is dry or in what stage of drying your painting is. So like last time, I mentioned that when the paint is wet, it can behave as if it's painting wet onto dry. And I kind of call that pretend dry. But what you can do with your painting is you can first like run your fingers across it like I am. You hear this sound? It's a good sound. That means nothing is coming off. Let me adjust my light for you a little bit actually. Okay, never mind. Alright, so that's a good sound when it does that. That means that your painting is touch dry. This was filmed last week, 7 days ago, and a lot of white went into this. It's actually pretty thick. A lot of titanium white, this white here, went into this. Titanium white is extremely slow drying, but how on earth did this paint happen to dry the way it did? I couldn't tell you that. That's not something that's within my realm of capabilities. But what I could say is that it might have something to do with the fact that I keep my paints in the freezer rather than squeezing it out of the tube and then just using a little bit at a time. So my biggest suggestion to you, and this is the palette that I was using last week. It was a Tupperware container, which I really like using. I don't dislike it. It's probably one of my favorite little palettes ever. It might have something to do with it. Who knows? Keeping it in the freezer, maybe that does something with the drying time. I'm not a chemist. But anyway, the next step in the drying process, or how to check if your paint is dry, is to take a palette knife, preferably a clean palette knife, and to run it across the painting. So this palette knife, though it may not look clean, I have wiped it off as much as I could on my paper towel, and what you can do is run it across, and you may not be able to hear it that well, so I'll pick up my laptop so you can hear it. Nothing is coming off. So that means that your painting is touch dry and ready for you to layer onto it again. So if you were to do the traditional approach, if this were a grisaille, if this was a monochromatic painting, I mean this is pretty much like a monochromatic layer here anyway, you could work with thinner paint and essentially glaze onto this thing. Like my students have project 2, so my student Richard is here with us, so he was one of the motivators for me to actually try to test this out, to see if you can use the same approach with the water mixable as you would with the traditional. So in order to show you that it is possible to glaze with the water mixable, I'm going to get my palette, and we're going to thin out the paint a little bit with, not with a medium, though it probably is possible to use a water mixable medium, and maybe I'll mess with that in the future, but I'm going to use, first of all, just the transparency of the paint. So you're going to focus on this highlight here, and I'm going to get ultramarine blue, which on its own is a very transparent color. So we're going to get ultramarine blue, and we're going to see if we can tint this with blue. So essentially we'll glaze it using the thinness of the paint on its own. And you see now that we have applied a little layer of a glaze, a blue glaze, using the transparency of the paint. Nothing is coming off. So this is handling just like traditional, and if you don't believe me, we'll glaze this corner of it too. And I'm not using, as you see here, I didn't use any medium, just the transparency of the paint. Because ultramarine blue is a transparent color, and you can even use a semi-transparent color. So now you see that it is showing the layer underneath. And just like I usually do with traditional, I'll get a dry brush or something to kind of scrub onto the surface and let the paint kind of flow into the, or dig itself into the layer underneath. So that's a little spot of blue there. If I want to use water, that is also possible. Let's experiment with this little corner. And then after that, we'll get into painting. I'm just talking about the various ways to glaze. Thanks for all of you that left a like. We got 2 likes already. So I'm going to go with blue again. And I'm going to add the smallest amount of water to it. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people ask about fat over lean. If you use the same medium, you should have similar drying times with each layer. This layer dried pretty fast. So the last thing I want to do is put an even faster drying layer. But that's not possible. This dried just extremely fast, so I'm fine. So I thinned out the paint. You can see how thin it is here. You can almost imagine the paint kind of how it's going to look on here. And we're just going to work with this little corner here. And now you see the effect of the glaze. How this little section here has now become more blue. And this, by the way, everyone, is not something I'll do all the time. I'm not talking about the glaze. Well, I guess I could talk about the glaze, but this is my Monday still life class for my students, which is 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And this is, again, on YouTube Public, just to experiment a little bit. But now you see that blue glaze is just like with traditional. I thinned it out with water. You already saw how fast drying that layer was. This shouldn't cause any issues at all. So what I have done is I have bypassed the need to use any solvents. I've bypassed the need to use any alkyds, fast drying stuff. I've bypassed the need to spend money on medium, and I can glaze just like traditional paint. So that's a huge positive. Now let me talk about another thing, which will be involving the painting now. We are going to do a sinking in test. How much has your layer sunken in? And you're going to use your darkest darks as a gauge for that. So what you're going to do is you're going to mix a relatively dark color. Not quite black, but something close to it. So I'm going to get blue. Now I'm going to get brown. This brown, by the way, this is a 3-color palette, even though it doesn't look like 3. Ultramarine blue, pyrrole red, and this one is, I keep forgetting which one this is. This is permanent yellow deep. So yeah, red, yellow, blue. So I'm going to mix the brown. The brown I made with just combining the 3 colors together, and I ended up getting that brown. So I'm going to mix up something dark, and you're going to use this to test how much your paint has sunken in, if it has sunken in at all. Now you can see my dark. Last week I used this palette, the Tupperware, which I used for probably like a month or so straight, which I like. I'm not saying I dislike it, so I do like the Tupperware. But right now I'm currently starting a new series of paintings for my portfolio, which is going to be for a commission business that I'm going to be starting up pretty soon. so I'm going to need to have a bigger palette so you can see the difference between the palettes. This just gives me more room to operate. And it's not wooden, so I don't have to worry about um, the drying, or sorry, the water on the wood. So I'm gonna see what's going on with my chat box. Haven't had anyone say anything yet, so I'm gonna just say hello. Hello world. To all of you that took computer science classes, you always start with hello world. I did horribly in that class. Anyway, so you're gonna take this and you're gonna test it by putting it right next to your darkest dark. And this is a test. Now, if there's a huge gap, a huge deviation between your darkest dark, which I just mixed here, and the value that you have, then your painting has sunken in, and you're going to have to restate your darks and then work your way up from the darks, which is totally fine. It's kind of what you do anyway with traditional paint. But you can see that there really isn't a big discrepancy between this dark here and this one. In fact, I don't even want a dark, this dark in this painting anyway, unless it was sitting underneath of here, and even then it wouldn't really get that dark. Since I'm painting this still life from life, there really isn't going to be anything that's that dark in it. So that means that I can paint wet into dry as if the paint was wet. What does that mean? So when the paint dries, when traditional paint dries, oil paint, it dries differently. It sinks in, which means that the darks tend to fade into the canvas. So when that happens, you usually have to apply a layer of oil under the whatchamacallit. So let me explain what sinking in is. So underneath there is gesso, and when you apply oil paint over top of the gesso, or there's just oil paint over top of it, either way, there's something underneath your paint layer, if you can imagine that. This is the underneath. So what happens is when paint sinks in, the oil is absorbed underneath here. Whatever this layer is absorbs the oil, and that's what makes it look like it fades. That's what sinking in is with traditional paint and with water mixable, because water mixable, as you see here, does sink in a little bit, but it doesn't sink in as much as the traditional. So you don't need to add extra oil over top or anything like that. You just layer the way it is. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that covers everything that you need to know about how to layer with water mixable oil paints. You can literally just paint into it as if the paint was wet, because it doesn't change. Now, the very worst thing you could do is use acrylic paint, just because you want to avoid the harmful solvents and stuff from traditional paint. Modern chemistry made this possible. We can use oil paint without having to have any kind of risk of air quality and cadmiums and lead and all that stuff. So that's a good thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and just paint. The rest of this is just going to be me painting. So the shadow is going to be the first thing I'm gonna look at. So I have maybe a little bit too much blue in it, so I'm gonna mix on here. Hey Ingrid, do I like water soluble paints? I do. I find that they are faster to work with than traditional, in the sense that because of that pretend dry thing, I could work every single day on a painting and not have to wait for it to be this dry, for example. Um, I do really like it. I've grown to get used to the fact that when you mix, this feels different. This has more of kind of like a harder, like the pull of the paint is harder. It's more stiff than the traditional. The some feel different than others. Cobra is a little bit more kind of like a melted butter kind of gooiness to it. But I do enjoy it. It's very consistent. It's cheaper. It's easier to clean. If I leave my brushes out, it's not going to be that big of an issue. So I really, these days, I really do like it. Uh, hey Kumari, hello there. Alright, so I'm just adjusting this color here. Like I said, I can paint wet onto dry and know that my colors are gonna remain true. And this is next to impossible with acrylic, at least for me, because acrylic dries darker, and it dries in 5 minutes. So in 5 minutes, you've got something that's a different color. So you're constantly guessing what you're gonna get with it, and it's just not even worth the hassle. Which might upset some people because it might, but it's just my opinion. Um, yeah, these are Cobra talons. Yeah, there's some people out there that don't like to drive stick shift cars, and that's okay. That's what their preference is. I have always had stick shift car. I'm allergic to automatic cars, so it really is personal preference. All right, so now because this is glass, there's a lot of little in between values that are going to be a little difficult to explain. So at this point, I'm just going to paint. And of course, like I said, this is part of my Patreon, so I'm not always going to do this stream at this time. So my students that are in the still life tier, which is $5 a month tier, are able to join me on Zoom on Mondays at 10 Eastern Daylight Time while I'm painting. Or if they want to, they can simply just watch the pre-recorded video, which is what this will be for YouTube when you're watching this later. Alright, so let's put in these little reflections. Hey Stephanie. Little tiny reflections of the glass. So Ingrid asked, what mediums do you use? Alkyd, walnut oil. That is a great question, and this dried pretty much as if I had used a fast drying medium, but I don't use any medium. I just use the paint and the water to clean the brushes and to thin the paint from time to time. But I won't ever thin it to the point where it's dripping. As you recall, when I started this, I toned the white with very thin paint, and that's the most thin it will be. But no medium, just the water. So Richard has purchased water mixable. Right, you bought a water mixable medium.
I just experimented with, those canvas pads to see whether I liked it. I haven't really done any project with it.
Oh, so you just tested it on the canvas pads? Was it the quick dry
Yeah.
medium that you bought?
It was the quick dry. I liked it. It made but I'm using Artisan, and Artisan is a much stiffer paint than Cobra, so it helped with the flow of the paint, I thought.
So it was the Artisan quick dry, and it helped with the flow. Did it actually accelerate the drying?
Yes,
It did?
very
Oh.
much.
But
It's dry in a few hours.
dry in a few hours. Did you use a little bit or like a lot?
I think I used very little.
Very little.
Just I just dip my brush in it occasionally to, and, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So yeah, everyone that's oh, thank you for the super chat, Stephanie Thompson. Thank you. Oh yes, Lucy and Hugo will be very happy. Thank you for the super chat. Everyone should say cheers. Thank you so much for the super chat, Stephanie. Um, that is very kind of you. So let me know, Stephanie, if you ever wanna. I mean, you've been so nice to me. If you ever wanna to join, like take a little test ride on the Patreon, just feel free to email me. I put my email. Well, I'll just put it on here. Let's see. That's my Gmail. So just send me an email, Stephanie. If you're interested, I'll give you some free Zooms so you can hang out with us. That's my email. Hopefully, I don't get too much spam from from the internet. So Ingrid wrote, "Am I using a linen canvas?" No, this is a cotton canvas. Yeah, for most purposes, cotton works fine. Yes, the longevity of it is not. It's not going to last as long as a linen canvas, but who knows? I mean, the difference between, I don't know, like 50 years, which is what they say cotton lasts, which cotton canvas was invented not that long ago. But the difference is not that big. I mean, it's not that different really. I mean, this one is the Rembrandt that I was working on. Again, this is all with Cobra. Um, this is a linen, universal linen, um, and it's just fine. I mean, it's kind of not that big of a difference, except for the texture. But again, it's not that big of a thing. So thank you so much for the super chat, Stephanie, and feel free to send me an email if you would want to hang out in one of our Zoom sessions. Alright, so now I'm going to mix kind of like a grayish blue. So here's a trick with this. Not that there are any tricks. It's pretty much mix as you go. Evaluate the color and the value as you go. So I'm testing that out, and that's a little too green. So I'm going to just put a little brown and some blue into it. You don't have to glaze if you don't want to. I usually don't. I like opaque painting. I'm mixing an orange into it. Orange will change the direction of the blue. And this is a big deal. I'd say this is a big deal with oil painting. I don't think it's been explored as much as it should have. And it will be explored more in the future, I'm sure. But us traditional painters, we typically don't like change. But if you can find something out there that can benefit painting as a whole, that would be better than trying to recreate what Rembrandt did and what Caravaggio did. I mean, sure, that's nice, just as nice. Like, I don't know, like the Renaissance Festival is nice. But if you want to push painting into the future, I think more and more people these days just don't have access to their own sink to use to clean like lead-based paints and stuff like that. More and more people don't even have the resources to spend $50 on a tube of cadmium red. So the fact that these paints are cheaper, but they are artist grade, they clean well, they layer well, is really going to be a major impact, I think, on the art world in the future. Let's see. So I'm going to use Cobra. Let's see. And also use the quick dry. Oh, good. So maybe I should experiment with the quick dry. I have nothing against mediums. I just really haven't used any of them. So Stephanie wrote, taking so many classes, don't have much spare time. Oh, thank you. Well, you're always welcome, Stephanie. You're always welcome. Oh, thank you. Good luck on your accounting test. Good luck on your accounting test, Stephanie. The difference between this color and this color is not that big. However, as you saw, this was painted opaque. So again, another testament to how close you can, how subtle you can make colors with the Cobras. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna do is evaluate this shape here. Needs a little more subtlety, so I'm gonna give it a little more subtlety. So again, like I said, I'm painting opaque. I like to paint opaque over opaque. Not so much a transparent little layer, but opaque. I mix up a fair amount of paint, and I apply the brushstroke rather kind of like a patting motion. Even though it's opaque, the application of the paint is really smooth. And forgive me for missing this comment. Someone asked, "Is it okay to clean your brushes in the sink?" And I would say, like the kitchen sink. I think that's what someone asked. And yeah, you can clean your brushes in the kitchen sink. Just make sure that you don't have any dishes in the if you know what I mean. Like you don't want to clean your brushes, and then let this be your coffee cup. Accidentally put paint in there. Um, just be careful with that. And even so, it's not. There are no cadmiums here. I don't have cadmiums. Cobra has cadmiums, but I don't have any cadmiums here. Ingrid, so you wrote, how long does it take to Cobra take to dry? As you saw, that this was a week, and this was completely dry. If you want a more current example, let's go to a painting that I was working on yesterday. And like I said, I'm going to be starting a portrait commission business. So if anybody wants a custom portrait from me, let me know. I'm still in the works for creating a website and all that stuff. But don't judge me, this is not finished. This is just a section of a painting that I'm working on, and it's unfinished. But I was working on this part yesterday. I was adjusting the dog's ears. So I can run my fingers across it. The top, that is. That was yesterday. And nothing is coming off. This should be somewhat in the middle dry because I used a lot more paint, and yellow is a little more slow drying. And barely anything comes off. Almost nothing comes off. This right here should be wet. And you see it's a little bit wet. But the fact that the area around the ears had already become touch dry, and that was a day ago, I'd say it takes about maybe what, like 3 or 4 days for it to be touch dry. It depends. In the past, I would have said it would take like a month or 2 weeks. And I gotta tell you, everyone, if your Cobras or if your water mixables are drying really, really slow, then try what I'm doing, see if it does anything for you. Put it on your palette and put it in the freezer when you're not done. And that might accelerate it. I'm not sure if that's what's causing that for me, but it might benefit you. All right, so Richard, are you with me?
Yes.
Yeah, the timer is on again, so I think we should probably refresh it again.
Oh,
Is that okay? All right, cool. I'll see you in a second, Richard.
great.
All right, so everyone on YouTube is wondering what refreshing means. Like I said, my students are able to be on a Zoom with me. So my phone is connected to Zoom, and you can Zoom with me. I can give you advice on your paintings and stuff during class. That's how class runs. Monday is still life. Wednesday is portrait. Friday is figure painting. So, but the reason we have to refresh is because I don't have the Zoom Pro account. So we refresh the link every 45 minutes. And by the way, it's the same link every week. I actually had one Zoom link that lasted 2 years before it just didn't work. So it's the same link, and you just refresh it, and we get to hang out on Zoom. And my classes are usually an hour, but they tend to run over an hour, like all the time. Just because I like to put more time into my content. Hey Richard, we connected?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Cool.
I'm just standing up today.
That's okay. Yeah, it's good to stand up from time to time. I don't really like sitting and painting much, but I do it anyway. So someone wrote, so ARKK, sugar-free candies to reward myself, or apples. Oh, thank you. I love Honeycrisp apples. Those are my favorite apples. Honeycrisps. It's a shame everything is so expensive these days. Yeah, Honeycrisp was my favorite. This has gotten too dark. That reflection's actually lighter in real life. So let's mix this. And you see that is opaque. It's too dark. I'm gonna go to my brown. And this is an extremely useful thing. This is a very useful thing, and I tend to repeat myself a lot. But this is a very useful thing with when you're trying to make realistic paintings. The fact that they dry true and you're able to work on them from, like pretty much every single day in a row if you want to, is very useful, because you basically just mix on your palette. You get the exact value that you want, and you know that it will look the same when it dries. And when it layers wet into dry, it's almost like painting wet into wet, in the sense that the colors don't change on you. And that is a huge advantage over traditional. But I'm not knocking traditional, of course. Like I enjoy traditional paints. I mean, they are what I started with. That's what my whole YouTube channel is based on that. So of course I'm not gonna say that don't use traditional. Use it if you can, if it benefits you. But if you have health concerns or anything, if you live in a one bedroom apartment in Alexandria, Virginia, and only have two sinks, one for the kitchen, one for the bathroom, you're probably not going to want to clean cadmium cadmiums off of your brushes or use mineral spirits in a room where you have a puppy. You're probably not going to want to do that. So that's another reason. That's one of many reasons. I'll get into some detail for this lid. By the way, I use the same brushes with water mixable that I would with traditional. So this is, I just switched to a sable brush. This is a cat's tongue, not made from cat's tongues, but as you see here, it's a cat's tongue shape. So there's some little lines here. I'm gonna paint them in. Some details for the lid. Now, obviously with an ellipse I shouldn't have anything flat, so I'll round that out later. So Richard, do you have any questions?
Not right now.
Cool. Yeah, this at least this stage of the painting is kind of business as usual. Not really anything too complicated here. Oh, cool. Question from Ingrid. I am using more Cobra than regular. Yes, I haven't really used regular oil paint in months. Probably, I don't know, probably like 6 months, 8 months. The maybe, I don't know. I used to actually add uh, the traditional with regular in the past, and I would use spike lavender to thin it. But the Cobra was always kind of in there. But yeah, these days I'm using only Cobra. But you can. I mean, if you use spike lavender or any other solvent, you can even use safflower oil to thin out your traditional paints if you want to. But yeah, I'm just using Cobra. And they're pretty easy on the brushes too. I mean, I have like this one. I left it yesterday when I was working on that painting. I just left it overnight, and this morning I was able to clean off the somewhat dryish paint, and just water. Oh, thank you, Eric. Thank you, thank you. Yes, gives me much positivity. Thank you for that comment. Okay, so let's mix slightly yellowish orange highlight. And this is similar to the Bob Ross palette, how he had that plexiglass palette. But of course, if I had my way, I would use a wooden palette. But I don't mind this. Somebody asked me, one of my students asked me if it bothers me that I can see through. It doesn't really bother me. But what I do like is whenever I clean it, as you can see here, it's kind of opaque. And I was telling Richard about this earlier, that I like when it's opaque, because when you're mixing onto this, as you can see here, when you're mixing onto this, it feels nicer. It's kind of like a smoother surface than mixing onto just the like super clean glass, plexiglass. Yeah, so now I'm punching highlights up, pushing my darks, and that's what makes glass tend to look like glass, if you can get the lights in the right spot. I mean the highlights. I mean, it's mostly a couple strong highlights and a middle value here and there, but that's what glass objects are. Do I have allergies to regular oil paints or solvents? No, I don't have any allergies to them. Like I said, it's just I'd switch to them because we got a 12. When we got my puppy, he was 11 weeks old, and the last thing I wanted to do was to use odorless mineral spirits around them. The thought of it made me feel sick. And just the sink thing, like that's the reason why I use these paints. However, I have found advantages to them that I would not have found if I didn't spend this much extra time trying to learn how to use them. Hey Jonas, welcome. So I will say, and you know that if you've been watching my videos long enough, you know that I tend to experiment a lot. But I will say that there are more pros than cons to using Cobra or any water mixable. I can't say any. I can only speak for Cobra. And Richard, you can speak for the artisan, right? You like the artisan.
Well, I have the Cobra. I'm building up my supply, so I'll probably. I'm cheap. I don't want to throw my artisan away.
I understand. Yeah, I wouldn't want to throw away paints either. Except I have like probably 50 tubes of paint in my trunk, the trunk of my car. So some of them are even Rublevs. Yeah, so a little subtlety here and there, and the glass will start to look like glass. Some reflection on the floor. So Ingrid, you don't like artisan? I hear a lot of people don't. And there's a lot of people that don't like Cobra either. water mixable in general. So I mean, it's personal preference. So here's one rare occasion where I will thin the paint out a little bit. And I'll use less than a drop of water. I'll use almost nothing. And that's how I got that effect there. Alright, so now let's adjust the handle. Yeah, Cobra is highly rated, and I want to be sponsored by them. So again, if anybody knows somebody that knows someone, that would be nice. I keep emphasizing the fact that you can layer true, and that's what this class is all about, is true. Remember, what does it mean that you can layer true? It means that it dries true. It means that I can, with confidence, put this color down and know that when this layer dries, it is going to look the same or identical. Especially in the lights, it doesn't really change very much in the lights. Yeah, Ingrid, the Monday Zoom is supposed to be an hour, but Richard, we've been here since like 10, right? Since like 10:05 or something.
Yeah.
So they typically go over an hour anyway, Ingrid. But we got students that kind of like stop by and then have to leave and then stop by again sometimes. Usually that's more with the other classes, but yeah, that's 1 hour. So again, everyone, that is $5 a month. Again, I can always give you advice on your paintings during class. And of course, as a student, you have access to a virtual classroom, which is a video that I make to give students advice on their paintings, whether it's class projects or their own personal paintings. Oh, thanks, Ingrid. Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to see you there on Monday. Yeah, so we've been here about 50 minutes, so I'll apply this little reflection here, and then we can let the YouTube, we can end the YouTube. Of course, Richard, we can hang out a little bit afterwards. But yeah, this little reflection, and then I'll ask if there are any last minute questions. As you see, there's a big range of color that you can get with Cobra, and again, it's just 3 color palette. It looks like more colors, but red, yellow, blue, white. Use those colors to make my own orange, to make my own brown and green, and that's about it. So from GIG, how do you feel Cobra is better than Artisan? Oh, you're asking Ingrid. I mean, I haven't tried the Artisan in a while, so I can't really say. But I know that Richard, one of my students here, is says that the Artisan is more stiff, right? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes. I, I don't want to sound like I'm promoting Artisan. I know there's a lot more negative comments about Artisan than Cobra. Like I said, it's just was convenient at the time that I got them. So Cobra has a much more buttery feel to it than the Artisan. And I think I might enjoy working with that better, but in the future.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That is one big benefit that it is easily.
I'll say this about reading comments on different websites. It's almost everyone who uses Artisan seems to suggest using the mediums with it. It almost seems as if Artisan was invented to use the mediums.
Oh.
I don't know. That's just me.
Oh,
Like
cool.
they want you to buy their mediums.
Oh, they want you to buy the mediums. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's personal preference, but of course, whatever's most convenient is always good to start with. Let's see, and then GIG Road. But yeah, just like Richard said, it's almost like the artisans are made to use mediums. So yeah, the quick dry artisan medium is the one that will make it more fluid. Okay, so it looks like that should be it for the YouTube. So once again, everyone, my online classes are Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. $5 a month is for still life, 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You are able to paint with me on Zoom. Same thing with portrait class on Wednesday. Portrait is $10 a month. Also gets you access to Monday Still Life. And then figure painting is $20 a month. Also gets you access to Monday and Wednesday. Oh, good. Yeah, you could still use the same solvent to clean it afterwards if you want to. As long as it completely dries on the brush, it should be fine. So once again, thank you so much, everyone on YouTube. I wish you the very best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next one.